A-level physics was a pretty dull subject. I think I flunked it after the first year. Michael wasn't in my class at that stage, but we were in a double session of A-level physics with a teacher who was probably very good, but he was pretty dull at the same time. And an hour and 10 minutes of physics in the middle of the afternoon was a pretty daunting and miserable experience. However, occasionally there might be a message to be delivered to the teacher from the head, and who should be selected to deliver the message but Michael? So in the middle of a boring physics lesson, there was a knock on the door. Come in, the door opened, and Michael stepped in. And everybody loved Michael and saw him as a little bit of a clown. And of course, this was a platform for him. It was a stage for him. So he couldn't possibly just come in, give the teacher the note and walk out. He came in with a smile, sort of winked at the class, gave a little wiggle and sort of sashayed across the floor to where the teacher was sitting, who looked at him a bit bemused. And he gave him the note. He said, "Oh, thank you." And then same again on the way out, he smiled, that great big grin, a little wiggle. And by the time Michael went out the door, the class just collapsed in roaring laughter, not at Michael, but with him. And the teacher, who'd been holding it together up until then, threw his chalk down, sat back, and he just said, "What is it with that lad? What has he got?" And to me, that captures Michael. He can walk into a room and destroy it just by being there. And I think that's fantastic.
A long time ago, in a land very far from the northeast of England, there lived a writer named Lyman Frank Baum. Better known simply as L. Frank Baum, the author, born in Chittenango in the state of New York, penned a great number of novels. By far the best known of those today are his children's classic, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, and the further 13 books set in the marvellous land of Oz, which followed. The Wonderful Wizard of Oz was published in 1900, and its story was immortalised on the cinema screen in the classic 1939 Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer motion picture, The Wizard of Oz. In 1985, a sequel of sorts was released, though Disney's Return to Oz was more a realisation of Baum's Oz novels than a direct continuation of the earlier movie. Baum's novels had featured a host of larger-than-life characters, from a living tin woodsman and a talking lion to Bungle the Glass Cat and a mechanical man named Tik Tok. A notable difference between Return to Oz and the earlier Wizard of Oz was that where the MGM feature had leaned towards stylised costumes and a hefty suspension of disbelief, the Disney movie made every effort to bring the unlikely, unwieldy physicality of its outlandish characters to the screen. Characters like the hesitant Jack Pumpkinhead and the villainous Gnome King were made believable by hook or by crook, with all the ingenuity of every branch of motion picture special effects employed. Tik Tok, the one-man robotic army of Oz, was no exception. Shaped like a large brass ball with stumpy legs set wide apart, no viewer watching could have imagined it possible that there was a human operator inside making him walk. But an operator there was, a golden-haired boy named Michael Sundin. Michael was the Gateshead lad who went to Oz, and this is his story.
Michael Sundin was born and raised in Low Fell, Gateshead, not far from where the iconic Angel of the North statue now stands. Of course, the landmark, which is now such a familiar sight to so many of his peers in the area, was not here during Michael's lifetime.
When he lived in Gateshead, him and his friend were, I saw them roller skating down Jackson Street, the local shopping street, in orange and brown tracksuit in the late 70s. And it was like a scene from New York transplanted into Gateshead, so it was quite surreal.
Great at every different kind of sport. He was around on his roller skates. He's a fantastic dancer, and he was so energetic and up for everything. And it's the spirit that he brought to everything that I particularly remember.
A blonde, outgoing, gregarious ball of fun. That would be how I would describe Michael. Always on the go, never quiet, very mischievous, and loved by everyone.
The amazing thing he had was an openness, almost, guileless. it's like he looked out into a world that he loved and was fascinated by, and I don't think anyone could help but find that, attractive, just wonderful.
Life and soul, always wanting to be the centre of attention.
And that face, the smile, everything about Michael was just happy.
He had like a permanent grin, smile on his face.
I think Michael's face in my memory is his big, cheeky ear-to-ear grin.
He just always had a beaming smile.
Had the grin of a Cheshire cat, and Michael smiled a lot.
Whenever you were with the guy, he was always laughing and joking and smiling.
His laugh used to make me laugh, even if the thing wasn't funny that he was laughing at.
I don't ever remember seeing him serious.
This amazing blonde, tousled hair trampolinist who, for gay men like me, looked at him on our television at the time, not knowing that he was gay, but thinking, oh, gorgeous. And then later, realising that he was gay, even more gorgeous.
Lunchtimes, there was actually competition to get onto Michael's dining table in the school canteen because he was so much fun. It was nearly all girls that he sat with, and they absolutely adored him. And he was just a great raconteur. He always had stories to tell, particularly in his later times at school. And I particularly remember he had this booming laugh that just filled the canteen, and sometimes I wondered what they were talking about. If I wasn't able to get onto his table, which I always tried to do, all he heard was flowing laughter coming from that table, and they always seemed to have so much fun.
The first thing I think about when I think of Michael is what a beautiful young man he was. Radiantly beautiful, lovely, friendly, completely without any mischief, any malice. He was just a lovely person.
The very first memory would, I think, be being him doing cartwheels in my back garden at the age of about 10. He used to impress my mother, who was a PE teacher.
Some of us could bounce it and down, maybe drop onto sitting position and back up again. Michael would be up a height, twirling and spinning and doing the splits, doing the whole thing, and he was absolutely amazing.
I can remember him again at our junior high school. First time he was on a trampoline, nearly taking the lights down in the sports hall because he was certainly showing prowess in those days.
He went on to do that competitively, and he reached world championship level, did extremely well.
I followed him into trampolining. He was a natural sportsman, really. He was very agile and physical, even from a young age. And he got into trampolining. It was big in the middle school, which was unusual. Normally it was senior schools where it would be done. So we started earlier than a lot of people. And Gateshead had a building reputation in trampolining, quite a new sport. And he took it up, and then I followed. So I was always that little bit behind him. And a bit of rivalry as he sort of tailed off in his teens and got other interests like the disco dancing.
You know when he used to dance in the cage at Tuxedo Junction?
Oh yes, yes I do.
He was dancing at one of the clubs in Newcastle. It was called Tuxedo Junction, and he was dancing in a cage that was elevated. It was hanging down. It was like a bird cage hanging down from the ceiling on a chain.
Well, I used to go there on purpose so Michael would dance with me because he would make me look good. Because he was an amazing dancer. He won all of those competitions, didn't he, when he was younger? I was so jealous because he asked me to be his dance partner, and I said no. Just like
What?
I know, because I didn't want to be his dance partner. He was just a little kid.
He was only about a year younger than you, wasn't he?
I know. Well, I wanted to be with the older kids, not with the younger kids, didn't I?
Music was very important to Michael. He loved all kinds of music, particularly dance music, because he was such a great dancer. In 1977, which was shortly before Michael left school, Grace Jones had just hit the scene. Michael brought his ghetto blaster into school, and he was blasting this music in the class and in the playground, and everybody was thinking, what's this? It's sort of strange, and he loved it. You know, disco versions of Send in the Clowns and What I Did for Love, and Michael is singing along. Michael was not the best singer. The fact that he was a little bit off key didn't put him off, and he would belt the numbers out, and I clearly remember him singing along to Grace Jones on his battery-powered ghetto blaster with a cassette in school in the late 70s.
He was like that annoying little brother, you know, he was like always into everything. He was always there when we did everything. He was always in the mix, as it were, and he used to want to be with us all the time.
We'd be standing on the trampoline. We'd spot standing on the trampoline, and he'd come in the middle of us, wouldn't he? With a great big smile on his face, and Leslie, are we going to do this? Or Joan, come on, we're going to play backflips. Come on, let's go on the running man.
When he got on the trampoline, he was professional.
Oh yeah, he was.
Like we all were, you know, we could all have a laugh, we could all mess about, but when you got on that trampoline, nothing else mattered but that routine, what you were doing. And Michael always excelled at that.
He was always the natural gymnast, and I was the one who sort of muscled through, not as elegant, but determined, and he did wonders. Again, it was quite a short career in trampolining compared with me. I did it for 17 years competitively. He did it for probably about 6 or 8, and what he achieved in that short spell was amazing, really.
Michael was the kind of character that had a goal or several goals and would do what was required to get to the end game.
He had inside him that drill mentality of, this is the time, this is the performance, this has to be right. I'm
sure that he could have sustained a career in athletics in one form or another if he'd wanted to do that, but I think he was really more drawn towards the stage and his dancing. I mean, his dancing got him some great roles.
He was quite caring as well, wasn't he? He didn't want to hurt anybody or upset anybody. He would hate it if he'd upset you, wouldn't he?
Yeah, he would. Remember when we went to Hexham Camp? They had to break the ice. The older guys, they had to break the ice to go in the pool. It was outdoors in the pool, because he was being a pain in the backside. And they put him in the pool and they broke the ice to put him in it. But he didn't care. He just got up and got out and said, oh, well, that's all right.
I would say nowadays he would be diagnosed as ADHD, something like that. He was very hyperactive.
Now I think you'd say he had like ADHD or something.
Probably. He couldn't stand still, could he?
Tricky at school, I would say. Tricky to contain for the teachers, but in a positive way, just in a bit of a show-off and an extrovert rather than in a disruptive way, but obviously was a little bit disruptive.
I'm sure you'll remember that you're not supposed to eat sweets in class, and of course the teacher had a standard put down. Michael, unless you have enough sweets for everybody, I need you to spit that out now. And of course, guess what? The next day, there's Michael sitting at the front, chomping and slurping deliberately loudly, waiting for the teacher to say the standard line. Of course, at which point he stood up with his great big cheeky smile, with a huge bag of the cheapest shoes, went around the entire class and gave them to everybody, and sat down and had a look to the teacher as if to say, now what are you going to do?
Very mischievous, always into trouble, always going to have his way and do his own thing, which I think stood him in great stead further down the line. But yes, he was of the two brothers, he was by far the most mischievous, but we're both very alike, and I think that's why as cousins we were so close, so we're getting to mischief together.
Yeah, I think that sort of shaped his future in being such an extrovert and a show-off and agile, physical, and I guess that's why he went into the dancing as well. He could do it, and it was a chance to perform.
There was a guy who had a strawberry stall at the Hoppings at the Town Moor in Newcastle, and there was one year he engaged Michael to be a strawberry salesman. And of course, rather than just stand there and wait for people to come to him to buy some, Michael was a real salesman. He shouted, come on, lovely, gorgeous, juicy, ripe strawberries. They're so sweet, and really exaggerated it. And he had a queue of people, and the guy made a fortune. And so for a number of years, he actually contacted Michael and begged him to come and do the same job again. He wasn't really academic, he wasn't happy to be doing homework. I can remember I was busy doing homework and Michael was lying in the garden sunbathing in the summer. And I knew that he would make his career and be successful in things other than the schoolroom. And qualifications aren't for everybody. And I knew that Michael would find a way to do very well and to excel in his talents by things other than being in the classroom, and that's a very good reason why he left school. As Michael got a bit older into his teens, he had a taste for nice clothes, nice shoes, nice holidays, and of course he needed to pay for these things. So although he was still at school, he had a number of part-time jobs. He worked in the butcher's on Low Fell, and I think he worked in 1 or 2 shoe shops, and I think he will have done very, very well in sales. He could sell snow to the Eskimos, and just his temperament and his character made him a natural salesman, even though he didn't choose that for his career.
He worked in the coal board in an administrative role, which was very different to his performing, and he used to do disco dancing at the club in Newcastle, get paid for it, and be finishing 2 o'clock in the morning and then going to bed very late and then being late for work, not making the 9 o'clock start at the coal board, or being very tired at work because of that. So I think that was a clash, and it was obvious where his interests lay, and he chose the path, and I think he never looked back really. He never did a 9-to-5 job after that. He waited tables as everyone does in between their performances, but he never went back to an office job.
Michael actually caught me one of the times when he was spotting on the trampoline, and
oh, I remember that.
I had a problem with my knees, and I took off to do a double back, and my knees gave way, and I was coming down upside down, and he caught me, and I was just wearing a t-shirt and a pair of athletic sneakers, and he pulled me knickers down. So instead of like saying, "Hey Michael, thanks for saving me life," and I slapped him for pulling me knickers down.
And yes, most people loved him, but inevitably some people maybe they're a little bit jealous of such a big personality, and he could certainly defend himself, if ever that happened.
See, back then, because it was the innocent times, I didn't know he was gay. I just thought he was a gentle soul. So yeah, and it's really weird. I never even thought until it came out later, and then I thought, oh yeah, but I just didn't think, because he was my mate. I just thought he was just, he was, yeah, a little bit feminine, but but just happy. I didn't even consider it. It's like quite weird, really, because I think because that was in the 70s, and I think things have changed since then.
So I would have been 14, 15, 16. I think he might have been a year or 2 younger than me. We never ever thought about sexuality or anything like that. We never thought about like the difference between boys or girls or anything even. We were trampolinists. We weren't.
There wasn't any difference, was there?
No, there wasn't any difference at all, and we never ever thought about it. I think the only time when I thought about Michael being a boy as opposed to a friend and a trampolinist was when he was dancing at Tuxedo Junction.
Michael was sick of rumours about him and his personal life. He was certainly sick of being bullied, because anybody who was a bit different, certainly those days, was seen as an easy target for the bullies. So there was one point which I wasn't there for, but I heard all about. Michael stood up in class and came out to the entire class during a moment when the teacher was out. And of course then that was met with absolute shock. I think maybe some of the lads might have laughed. Several of the girls who had been completely in love with him burst into tears, because obviously their dreams were shattered.
Well, everyone fancied him. The girls I knocked about with at school, who were into sport and all that, yeah.
Michael obviously sought to preempt any more bullying and rumours, and thought, well, if I stand up and say it, then who can argue with it? I've said it myself and you know that it's true, and what are you going to do about it? So really, I have to take my hat off to him for having the strength and the courage to stand up and do that at that time. You know, you've got to think that's back in the 80s, and things are very different now, but back then that was quite a tough thing to do, and I think that's a measure of his character.
There was a gay scene that started off in Newcastle, and Rock Shots was the place at the time. And I remember he once got beaten up coming out of Rock Shots, and the police were involved. I don't know if they caught the guys, but his clothes were ripped, and I didn't really think about it at the time, but it was obviously a gay bashing thing, and these things still happen, but I think it's a lot more accepted now, and it would be nice for him to be in a society where it is a lot more accepted, and he would fit in so much better. And I don't think he hid his sexuality, but it's a lot more open and positive now. So I miss that he didn't see that. Yeah, that's one of the regrets, I think, that he would fit in society so much better now than he did back then. He was a bit of a pathfinder, you know.
That isn't to say Michael didn't have a good go at kissing some girls, including the now wife of his brother.
Well, my first kiss was with Michael Sundin in 1977, behind the sports hall. Yeah, I was a bit of an oddity at the trampoline club where Michael and David were training. I came over from Newcastle, and I came from a Catholic all-girls convent grammar school. So from the minute I walked into Metro, I was a little bit out of place. But I just saw this gorgeous, blonde, curly-haired, and then when I saw him trampolining as well, I thought, oh, right, yeah, he's nice. And he had with him his 12-year-old brother with a big mop of dark hair. That was David, who I'm now married to. But I did tell David on our first date that Michael was my first proper kiss.
It was a different time back in the sort of 70s and 80s, and the understanding of human sexuality in that, especially with younger people, just wasn't there.
No.
And Michael was just a very open, friendly, positive person, but you could tell that he, you know, you could see from his career and what he went on to do with Blue Peter and then with Return to Oz and everything, that he had a desire to be like some stars now. You know, you've got to work towards getting towards that. It doesn't just happen, and you could tell that Michael was the kind of person who wanted that and drove. And he I think with trampolining and going around and seeing different parts of the country and meeting different people and everything, it was one of the things that gave him that lust for more of that.
Yeah, lust for life.
I remember at one school disco, it was called Aggie's Immobile Disco at Deanwell Church Hall. Michael was dancing away to probably Boogie Nights, I would imagine. And one of the guys thought that he would try to wind Michael up a little bit, and he danced alongside him. He sort of looked and he tried to copy the steps, obviously taking the mickey a little bit to try to embarrass him. And of course that was a mistake, because Michael was a far better dancer and it almost became a dance-off. But better than that, in the little gap between the end of that record and the start of the next one, and he'd drawn quite a sort of a crowd of people watching this spectacle, Michael was able to get the upper hand over the lad, because he said in the top of his voice, "Look, I don't know why you're dancing like that next to me, because I don't fancy you anyway." And of course the guy was absolutely mortified and red-faced. Everybody laughed and Michael won the moment.
I met Michael back in, I think it would have been about 1980, when I was doing the pantomime at the Theatre Royal in Newcastle. At one time I was one of the child dancers and he was one of the other roles in it.
Michael was very active in the Gateshead Youth Theatre, which was every Wednesday night in Heathfield School.
We were both in the Gateshead Youth Theatre group. He was more interested in appearing on stage and I was more interested in fiddling with the lights.
Michael then went on to professional theatre work.
But yeah, I always remember I think the things that stuck out about Michael so much was his mop of blonde, lovely curls and a beaming smile from ear to ear. He was such a friendly character. And I think for that image of him to have stuck out for so many years, it means something about him that he had that something, that X factor, whatever it is, that made you remember him all these years later. But yeah, he was lovely with us. I was one of about 8 children dancers in the theatre, in the performance. And he would always have time for us backstage. And let me tell you that not all of the stars and celebrities would have time for the children. I think to a lot of them we would be a bit of an irritant, but he always made time for us, whether it was backstage, doing little jokes and things like that. But yeah, he was always had time for us in the theatre, which was lovely.
The one thing that I particularly remember in Newcastle is pantomime. I think it was Aladdin in the Theatre Royal, and it starred Barbara Windsor. And there was a wonderful photograph with Michael balancing Barbara Windsor on top of his shoulders.
I first encountered Michael in one of the bars in Newcastle, and I spotted him straight away, but I didn't immediately go up and start chatting to him. And then the next time I saw him, I said, "Oh, I remember you. You were in such and such a bar, blah, blah." We got chattering away then. And we only knew each other socially. We got to know each other a lot, but each time it's like a little bits of a jigsaw puzzle of somebody's life, because we never actually ever arranged to meet up. I don't think we ever went out for a meal or anything like that. It was just a casual, friendly encounters.
Michael's dancing, he exploited that. He took advantage of that skill and that gift right the way through his life. And I remember in the late 70s there was a dance troupe on television. I believe they were on Top of the Pops, choreographed by Arlene Phillips. They were called Hot Gossip. Very, very popular. And Michael saw that and thought, "Oh, I quite like that. I could do that." And he did. And he got a group of girls together. He was the only male dancer, and he led them and choreographed them. And Michael's dance group was called Midnight Fantasy, and I saw them performing in a nightclub in Newcastle, and they were excellent. They were really good.
But I think he always knew that staying in the Northeast probably wouldn't get him to where the ultimate goal would be.
Michael probably would have been restrained in the opportunities up here.
He was a fish out of water, I think, in Gateshead.
And I thought it was a brave move going to London at a young age.
A sensible lad. He bought a house. He bought a garden flat on Essex Road in Islington, and I used to go down and visit him for weekends.
He had small acting and dancing roles. I think his dancing and gymnastic ability gave him a lot of opportunities for small roles where, you know, he was really useful in music videos, things like that, where he would be a standout character. And I think the Cats role rolled on from that. He brought a new character into Cats who was a gymnast, and they wrote that role in for him. So obviously they saw his abilities and used that in the Cats performance. It was performed in the round in London, so sometimes the Cats dancers are around you, so it was great to see Michael involved in that and be in the audience and be very cat-like and physical.
Michael and I stayed in touch while he was in London, but at that point there were no mobile phones, there was no social media. That would literally be a landline call, which I really enjoyed when they came through, to find out I was following his journey, his story, and to find he was so happy and so successful and going from show to show, or theatre to television, really heartened me, because it's what he really wanted. It was his ultimate dream.
Every few weeks we'd hear from him. You know, he had a very different life when he moved down to London. I think Newcastle, even though it had a disco scene and a starting off of a gay scene there, then it was quite a small place compared with London, and he really flourished in the community in London and just the interests that it had to offer. But he did come back every few months, and we did catch up with him. Obviously, whenever he was in a performance, whether it be on stage or a small TV role, then we'd hear about it and want to see what he was up to.
I'm pretty sure that he had various dancing parts in West End shows. The two memorable things that people can still see today, Michael was in 2 pop videos from the 80s. He was in the video for Rick Astley's song She Wants to Dance With Me, and as I say, that's still on YouTube, so everybody look it up. He is amazing. There's a bunch of guys in dinner suits who do a great dance routine around Rick and a club full of people, and that was great, but maybe a bit more acrobatic and in line with Michael's talents. Michael appeared on the Culture Club and Boy George video I'll Tumble For Ya, and Boy George is on stage with a whole load of chorus girls, and there's a couple of sequences in the video where Michael appears just on one side of the stage and he does constant backflips, one over the other, bouncing, and he goes around Boy George, and George sort of leans back so he doesn't get kicked in the face. And perfect example of how athletic and strong and talented he was, and he loved to go out night clubbing. And on one occasion Michael was in the Hippodrome nightclub, and there was an exotic dancer on the stage, and one of the things that they often do is they get audience participation. They try to pull some people out of the crowd up onto the stage, and normally it's sort of a bit to take the mickey out of them and to sort of maybe embarrass them a little bit in a positive way. But this guy picked on Michael, and it kind of backfired a bit on him because he didn't realise what a fantastic dancer Michael was. And this was a sort of an exotic dancer. I think the guy was maybe in a little pair of trunks or something like that. And he got Michael up on the stage, and I think he took his shirt off, and they danced together. But Michael could improvise dance as he went along, and he had a great time, and the pair of them created quite a spectacle, and they survived this routine, and I think everybody loved it.
Once again, Michael had been put into a potentially humiliating situation and had made the best of it to come out on top. He couldn't have known at the time that this wasn't fully the end of it.
And I was aware of him going off to do the film about Return to Oz, and extraordinary contortions he had to do to get into the rather cruel little costume he had to wear.
They required somebody who was very athletic, somebody who was small build and very strong for the character called Tik Tok. Tik Tok was a veteran soldier who was a robot, and it was a big spherical golden globe, and you couldn't see that there was a person inside. I think now it probably would have been done all electronically, but back in those days they needed somebody inside it.
Again, I think it was down to his gymnastic ability that they had this character that they weren't sure how it was going to be animated, and then they realised that if they found someone small and gymnastic, then they could fit it into the size of this robot character.
Michael was ideal for this because he was very agile, athletic, and this great big ball came in half, and Michael had to get inside the bottom half, took his back right down and actually put his head between his knees, and he had a camera inside the costume which was upside down, and then they bolted down the top half, and he was actually sealed in for the duration of each shot, but he was able to march along.
That must have been such a skillful job, because every movement Michael did in Tik Tok.
Most of the time he ended up walking backwards.
And there were other people that operated the face and other bits and pieces to do with that character. But yes, although you can't see him, Michael starred as Tik Tok in Return to Oz.
So it was something that not many people, I think, could do, and he did it really well. But it was another break that, I guess, his unique abilities gave him that role that he was able to do, and he was happy to do.
I think it took quite a lot of us by surprise when he first popped up on the TV screens as a Blue Peter presenter.
Blue Peter were doing a piece on the production of the film, and that's when they met Michael, and I think they saw obviously his potential because of his variety of skills, his energy, his bubbly character, but most of all how athletic and outgoing he was. And Michael's debut on Blue Peter actually was quite clever, the way that they brought this in, because they started off doing the piece about Return to Oz, and then they revealed that Michael, who played Tik Tok, was going to be one of the new presenters, and that was his debut. A really nice way to bring him into the show.
Even there were one or two directors who sort of thought he was a mistake, as a piece of casting, but they couldn't fault his attitude, his bravery. I mean, he did extraordinary things.
You've got to just keep on talking in the same way as the rehearsal, as if nothing was happening. It was tough. I wouldn't like to try it.
You take terrible knocks and you have momentary triumphs.
You can absolutely see the way that the world, that the media landscape that Michael worked in was homophobic as we would understand it now.
And gay men were particularly always presented as a threat to children. It was something they hung around our necks as wrong and as defaming as it was. They associated it.
And he said, "Are you all right about it?" And I said, "I'm fine, fine. If people want to know, I'll tell them. I'm not ashamed, and you shouldn't be ashamed."
He really did try to bring humour into the situation and to be positive at all times.